Today we're going to be making this very simple tight knit beach bag or purse depending on how you want to use it. And I am going to be working with the Lion brand yarns Re-Up Recycled Cotton and Polyester Blend. And this is 14 ounces of size 4 medium weight yarn, and the color is Surf Spray. And I'm also using a G or 6 or 4 1/4 millimeter crochet hook. And we're going to begin with our handles, so go ahead and grab whatever color you want your handles to be. And we're going to begin by attaching the yarn to our crochet hook using a slip knot. And then we're going to chain 34. And once you have your 34 chains, then we're going to turn them over. And we're going to be working in these back bumps back here in this third loop. So this is not part of your traditional V portion of your stitch, but instead this sort of lingering back loop back here. And we're going to skip our very first back bump, and then we're going to place 1 single crochet in the remaining 33 stitches in our row. And at the end of the row, we're going to chain 1 and then turn our work. And so from here, what we're going to do is place 1 single crochet in each stitch in our row. But we want to skip one of these stitches in the center here. And it doesn't matter which stitch, but we will be repeating this row over and over again, so you want to make sure that where you're skipping your stitch isn't the exact same every time, because that will create a little bit of a pattern and make this look kind of wonky. So all you're going to do is just try to randomize which stitch you skip each row, and we're going to reduce the number of stitches by 1 in each of our rows until we make it down to 5 stitches in our latest row. So you're just simply going to pick any stitch and you're just going to skip it all together, and then you're just going to work in the next stitch like this. So as long as you separate out where you're skipping your stitches, then you shouldn't be able to see them. So go ahead and repeat this process until you have 5 stitches in your latest row. And after working down to 5 stitches in your latest row, then your handle should look something like this. So from here, we're just going to chain 1 and turn our work just like we've been doing. And we're just going to place 1 single crochet in each stitch in our row. So we won't be skipping any stitches. And we're going to repeat this process until this portion of our handle reaches about 16 inches. And so your 16 inches are from where you've decreased down into your crochet hook over here. And go ahead and make sure that you've ended on the side where your starting tail is. And for this next portion of our handle, we're just going to build back out to our 33 single crochets. And we're going to do that by randomly adding a second single crochet somewhere near the middle of each of our rows, just like we did when we skipped a stitch. So otherwise, you're just going to place 1 single crochet in each stitch in your row, and you want to try to randomize which stitch you're placing your 2 single crochets in each time so that you don't get a pattern forming. So go ahead and repeat this process until you've built back up to 33 stitches in your latest row. And after you've worked back up to 33 stitches, then your handle should look something like this. So now what we're going to do is work on joining our 2 ends of our handles. So we're going to do that by chaining 20 at the end of our last row. And once you have your 20 chains, then go ahead and fold your handles in half like this. So now working with the other side of your handle where your starting tail is, you're going to insert your crochet hook up underneath that first single crochet stitch, and we're just going to place a single crochet there. And of course, you can always crochet over that starting tail if you would like to. And from here, we're just going to place one single crochet in each stitch in this portion of our handle until we get to the other side. So you should have a total of 33 single crochets when you're done. And when you make it across your handle, then you're just going to chain 20 again. And then to make sure we don't have any kinks, go ahead and fold your handle in half again. So now we're going to connect our chain to this sort of last stitch of our second handle. And this is the only corner of our handles that we haven't joined to yet. And we're just going to place a single crochet there, and then we're going to turn our work to work over that second handle like this. And all we're going to do is place one single crochet in each stitch in this handle as well. And so now your handles should be fully joined together by these sets of chains. And this should create a circular pattern for you, going around the handles as well as the chains like this. And so now picking up where we left off at the end of our second handle, all we're going to do is place 20 single crochets around our chain stitches. So to do that, you're going to insert your crochet hook in this gap between your handle and your chain stitch, and then you're just going to yarn over and pull up through the chains like that, and then yarn over and drop your 2 loops. And you're just going to repeat that until you have 20 single crochets over your chain stitches. And after you've placed your 20 single crochets over your chains, then you're just going to place one single crochet in each stitch from your handle here. And at the end of your handle, you're just going to repeat the process of placing your 20 single crochets over your chain stitches and then placing one single crochet in each of the stitches in your handle. And when you get close to the first set of single crochets over your chains, you're just going to switch to placing one slip stitch in these very last 2 stitches of your handle, like that. And from here, we're going to cut and tie off our yarn. Next, we're going to attach the next color to our crochet hook using a slip knot. And it doesn't matter which handle you work in, I'm just going to choose to work in this same handle where I just cut and tied off my yarn. And I am going to insert my crochet hook in this very first single crochet stitch from the handle. And I'm just going to place one single crochet there. And from here, we're just going to place one single crochet in each stitch in our row, going all the way around. And you should have a total of 106 stitches in your row. And when you make it over to the end of your tan colored yarn, make sure you place one single crochet in each of those slip stitches because they do count. And I recommend crocheting over your tail if you'd like to. And when you make it back around to your very first single crochet, you're going to place a slip stitch in it, and then we're going to cut and tie off our yarn again. So now we're going to repeat that process with our tan colored yarn. And I'm going to give this first handle a break and insert my crochet hook in the other handle. And again, it doesn't really matter where you begin these rows. So again, you're just going to place one single crochet in each stitch in the row. And when you make it to where you cut and tied off your blue colored yarn, then you need to choose whether you want to work in the slip stitch or in the actual stitch right here. And I'm going to choose to work in the actual stitch, but it doesn't really matter as long as you avoid working in both of those stitches, otherwise you will increase the pattern. And at the end of your row, you're just going to slip stitch into the top of your first single crochet stitch, and then we're going to cut and tie off our yarn again. And again, we're going to attach the blue yarn to our crochet hook using a slip knot. And I'm just going to insert my crochet hook on the other side of this handle. And it doesn't matter where you begin to work, but I just like to avoid working in the same spot every time. So from here, we're going to repeat that last row, placing one single crochet in each stitch in our row. And again, when you get over here to where you cut off your tan yarn, just decide if you want to work in the slip stitch or the actual stitch. When you get to the end of this row, we will not be cutting and tying off our yarn, so I'll show you what to do when you get there. And at the end of the row, we're just going to slip stitch into our first single crochet and chain one. And we're going to place one single crochet in each stitch in our row, beginning with that first stitch where we placed our slip stitch. And at the end of your row, you're going to skip your slip stitch as well as your chain one, and you're going to slip stitch into the top of your first single crochet. And from here, we're going to cut and tie off our yarn. And so next, we're going to add another tan row, just like we did for our previous tan row. And after adding your tan row, then I want you to add blue again, but rather than placing 2 rows of the blue like we did here, I want you to place 3. And at the end of your 3 rows with your blue, you're going to skip your slip stitch as well as your chain 1, and you're going to slip stitch into the top of your first single crochet, and then you're going to cut and tie off your yarn. From here, we're going to place 2 rows with our tan color, following the same process. And after placing your 2 rows with your tan yarn, you're going to go ahead and cut and tie it off. So now we're going to attach the blue yarn to our crochet hook using a slip knot. And just like all the other color changes, you can insert this anywhere. And this time we're going to do something a little different. What we're going to do is we're going to place 1 slip stitch, and we will be working in it. So keep it nice and loose. And then we're going to start placing our single crochets in each stitch in our row. And this way we can begin a continuous loop pattern, so we won't have to worry about starting and stopping our individual rows after this point. And at the end of your row, what we're going to do is just keep placing our single crochet stitches, and we're just going to allow our pattern to form a spiral. So to do that, insert your crochet hook up underneath that slip stitch, which was your first stitch, and you're going to place a single crochet there. Then you're just going to keep placing your single crochet stitches. And you've created your seamless spiral right here, so your rows should stack on top of each other pretty effortlessly. And we are going to follow this until we have a total of 12 rows with our blue colored yarn. And once you have your 12 rows with your blue yarn, then you're just going to place a slip stitch in your following stitch wherever you are in the row, and then you're going to cut and tie off your yarn. And from here, we're going to repeat these 2 rows with our tan colored yarn. We're going to insert our crochet hook somewhere away from where we just left off with our blue yarn. And after placing your 2 tan rows, then you're just going to cut and tie off your yarn, and then you're going to repeat the continuous loop pattern that we followed for these 12 rows of our blue yarn, but you're going to repeat them for the entire length of your beach bag, and I will meet back up with you when it's time to decrease down and finish off our bag. I went ahead and crocheted roughly 24 rows with my blue yarn. So right now you should have 106 single crochets in your latest row. So we're going to begin to close the gap in the bottom of our beach bag. And I recommend grabbing a scrap piece of yarn or a stitch marker for this next part. The first thing we want to do is single crochet together our next 2 stitches. So we're going to do that by inserting our crochet hook up underneath our next stitch and yarning over and pulling up through. Then up under our following stitch and yarning over and pulling up through. Then we're just going to yarn over and drop all 3 loops on our crochet hook. From here, we're going to place 1 single crochet in our first 5 stitches, and then we're going to single crochet together the 6th and the 7th stitch. So the way that I like to start each row is I place my first 2 single crochets, and then I go back to my first single crochet and mark it. And you already have your first 2 single crochets of this row, so you just need to place 3 additional single crochets, and then you're going to single crochet together that 6th and that 7th stitch. And you're going to repeat that until you make it back to your stitch marker. And you should have a total of 90 single crochets when you're done. And at the end of your row, you're going to remove your stitch marker. And the pattern for this row is going to be to place 1 single crochet in our first 4 stitches. And then we're going to single crochet together the 5th and the 6th stitch. And we're just going to repeat that going all the way around our row. And when we get done, we should have a total of 75 single crochets. And the pattern for our next row is to place 1 single crochet in our first 3 stitches, and then we're going to single crochet together our 4th and our 5th stitch. And we're going to repeat that around the row, and we should have a total of 60 single crochets when we're done. For our next row, we're going to alternate between placing 1 single crochet in our first stitch and then single crocheting 2 stitches together. And we're going to repeat that going all the way around our row, and when we get done, we should have a total of 30 stitches. And for our next row, we're just going to single crochet 2 stitches together at a time, going all the way around our row. And when we get done, we should have a total of 15 stitches. And at the end of your row, you're going to cut and tie off your yarn, and you want to leave a tail of about 1 foot in length. From here, we're going to weave our tail in and out of those 15 single crochets going all the way around our row. And once your beach bag is inside out, then you're going to pull on your tail to cinch up the gap in those single crochet stitches. Then you're just going to create a knot to secure it. And after you've secured your bottom, then you're going to turn it inside out again. And now you are done with your beach bag. Please let me know in the comments below if you experienced any issues while you were making this, and I will do my best to help you out. Thank you so much for working with me, and I hope you have a wonderful, awesome day.